Okay, yesterday we started learning the dinim of Talmud Torah, the chiyuv that everybody has to learn Torah. Okay, we learned that even if let's say you have a set shiur of learning, which you must have in the morning and at night, and for whatever emergency came up, not because you had to go out to the restaurant, a real emergency came up, so then the din is you're allowed to borrow time. You must make it up, and we said if you want to pay back with interest, this is okay. But you have to pay it up, but nevertheless it says in Shulchan Aruch you have to learn a little bit, not just nullify the whole class. Now if somebody is not able to learn, this physically they're not able to learn, it applies less today than it did years ago. Years ago everything was in Hebrew, or whatever language it was. And there are many illiterates that didn't know how to read Hebrew, they definitely didn't understand it, so they couldn't learn. Today, in today's world where you have in every possible language, anybody can learn anything. So there's really no excuse of somebody not being able to learn Torah today. Now, what happens if somebody has limited amount of time to learn? What should they learn? What should they learn? What part of Torah should they learn? Because it's interesting, the Gemara and the Rambam brings down that you should learn the third Mishra, third Mishnah, third Gemara, but the Pearl later poskim, including the Alter Rebbe, holds that nowadays where we learn Gemara, so Gemara includes in it everything basically. So if you have, let's say, a limited amount of time to learn, what part of Torah should you learn? So it says in Shulchan Aruch, very simple, you should learn practical halacha, because you need to know how to conduct yourself in day-to-day living. You're going to start learning a lot of difficult, complicated Gemara, but then you're not going to be able to learn what you know. There's a famous story that somebody once came to the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe, and he said, Rebbe, I have 1 hour a day to learn. Should I learn Gemara or should I learn Chassidus? So the Rebbe Rashab said to him, you should learn Chassidus. You know why? Because when you learn Chassidus, you'll realize you have another hour to learn. So then you can learn the second hour, you can also learn Gemara. But people should learn the halachos which are, relevant. And if not, it says, I started the point, I didn't finish it. What happens if somebody's not capable of learning? So then it says in halach they should support people that learn. Like we know Yisachar and Zvulun, Hillel had a brother that supported him. There was a lot of cases the Gemara talks about brothers that they made up a deal, that they're going to support, one's going to learn, one's going to support, similar to the Yisachar Zvulun concept, and that was considered as if they learned Torah also. So if somebody is not able to learn, that again applied more in the olden days, so then at least they should support people that do learn. Another important din is in respect of a sefer. He says in the halacha, and everybody says this din, that if you're middle of learning and you need to go out, you should not leave your sefer open, because it's disrespectful to the sefer. In fact, the Gemara says that if you leave your sefer open, you're going to forget what you learned. Mishkach Talmuda, it's kosher l'shikha, you end up forgetting your learning. Why? It's very simple, you're showing disrespect to the sefer, so you're not going to remember what you learned. That applies also, let's say somebody's in the middle of learning, they need to go to the bathroom or whatever, they have to go out to get something from whatever it is, they should always close the svarim. Or some people, they'll put something on top of the sefer just as if to cover it, to show type of respect for it. But when people go out, even B'chlal, people leave shul. You see there's a siddur open. People leave shul, they leave svarim opened. And it's just disrespectful to the sefer. In other places, we always heard this growing up as kids, that when the one that opens the sefer has to close it. I don't know where that comes from. But that's what we heard as kids. The one that opens the sefer has to close it. Bottom line is, if you see a sefer open, you're supposed to close it, because again, it's disrespectful for the sefer.
You're supposed to learn something from that page also? Does it mean that you should say something to the lines from the page?
Which page? The page that you had open in front of you?
Say you saw a sefer that someone left open.
No.
Before you close it, I read that you're supposed to read a few lines.
It's not a bad idea. You don't lose anything by learning a few lines. Are you obligated to do it? No, there's no reason why you would have to. Okay, next. is when you learn Torah, you have to be what's called you have to learn you have to learn Torah verbally, out loud. Why? Because then it says in halacha you're going to remember the learning better. We know when you articulate something in learning, then you'll know it much better. And he says, and here there's a machlekes, but Kitzer holds that even Torah Shebal Peh, but Al Rebbe disagrees with that, and that's where most poskim hold. That Torah Shebiksav, by the way, which is written Torah, the 24 books of Tanakh. So over there, if you read it, Torah Shebiksav, and you don't know what the words mean, you still get the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Torah Shebal Peh, if you say the words, but you don't understand what you're saying, so the Alter Rebbe holds it's not called Limud Torah, because the difference between Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh means the oral Torah that you need to understand. If you don't understand it, then you're not getting. It's better saying that than reading a comic book, whatever. But you're not getting the mitzvah of Talmud Torah because Torah Shebal Peh you need to understand. Torah Shebiksav, like Tilim. If somebody says Tilim, even if they don't understand the word that they're saying, so they get the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. They get the mitzvah of learning Torah. But oral Torah, you need to understand a little bit what you're talking about. And by the way, that's the same reason why you can call up somebody to the Torah that doesn't even know how to read well, or they don't understand what they're reading, and yet they make a bracha before and after the aliyah. Now, you're not allowed to make a bracha on learning Torah if you don't understand it. Why are they making a bracha before and after the aliyah if they don't understand it? And the answer is because it's Torah Shebiksav. It's Torah written Torah, unwritten Torah. You don't need to understand. So therefore, you're allowed to make a bracha on it in any way whatsoever, in any time. Then there's another interesting shaila in halacha. When you learn psukim, you learn Gemara, like, do you say Hashem's name or not? So it's interesting, like by Zmiris, when people sing Zmiris Friday night, Shabbos Day, Shalosh Hudas, they sing Zmiris. So even that's a whole interesting discussion in halacha. Do you say Hashem's name the way it is? Most people do, by the way, especially in the Sfardim. The Sfardim for sure, when they sing the Zmiris, they say Kibirkas Hashem or whatever they'll say on Hashem's name the regular way. And according to many, many opinions, it's not bracha, it's not Levatola because it's part of the song. In many places, the minhag is that they don't say Hashem's name in the proper way. They'll say Hashem. But the shaila is, when you're learning, are you allowed to say Hashem's name? So we find the interesting thing. You have, let's say, those that daven al nusach, so you say Kagavna Friday night. Okay, you say Kagavna Friday night right before Baruch Hu. So over there you have Hashem's name. You also Hashem Echad, Ishma Yachad. So then, you have Hashem's name. So over there the Rebbe writes that we do say it. And he brings down the Mashah and Brachas that says that but when you're learning, you're allowed to say the name of Hashem. So they bring down a whole discussion. Some people did. Like it says the Yavitz, who's the son of Rabbi Yaakov Emden, was the son of Cham Tzvi. When he learned Torah and he came to Psukim and he said Hashem, his father screamed at him, say it the right way. The real name of Hashem. Some poskim say you shouldn't, some poskim say you do. So as they say in America, whichever way you do it is good. Because you have opinions that say you could do it. Either way, you don't do it, you could do it.
Isn't it like if it's part of the pasuk, so you don't say it?
No, if it's a half, the Gemara says, Kol pasuk lepaskina meisha and then lepaskina. That's why if you ever notice in Sfarim, when they ever quote a half a pasuk, they write v'gomer.
Yeah.
Why do they write v'gomer? V'gomer means and continue. Because it's a din shchonarch. Any pasuk Moshe Rabbeinu didn't make as a pasuk, so we're not allowed to make as a pasuk. So you can't make a half a pasuk, because it's in Chumash. It doesn't sing as half a pasuk. So when you write, let's say in things, you write v'gomer, so then you're basically saying it's not a whole pasuk. I'm only saying half a pasuk. What? So anytime you say a whole pasuk, a complete pasuk, in Torah Shebiksav for sure you could say Hashem's name. Like you say Tilim, you say Chumash, right? So when people say, when a kid is learning, or even an adult, when an adult is learning the Kriya, or a kid learning for the bar mitzvah, of course they're saying it, they say Hashem's name the proper way. It's not a problem because he's saying it a pasuk. The question is, when you're teaching kids how to read, should you say it Hashem's name the real way or not? So that's another discussion. Halacha, some poskim say the kid should say it, you shouldn't say it. But again, even if they did, many poskim hold in learning, it's not a problem saying Hashem's name in vain. Okay, next. It's time yet. Okay, the next din in Kitzur is the dinim of writing a Sefer Torah and other holy svarim. Now, the Gemara says that it's a mitzvah on every single Jew to write a Sefer Torah. A mitzvah on every single Jew to write a Sefer Torah. Why? Because it says in the pasuk. How did they learn in the olden times? They didn't have chumashim. They didn't have printed chumashim. People learned from a Sefer Torah. How did they learn chumash? They took out a Sefer Torah. They learned chumash from a Sefer Torah. There was no other chumashim around. So that's what they did. In fact, it's brought down in halacha. Many people for Shnai Mikveh Echad Targum that they would do before Shabbos, twice the pasuk in Unklis, they would always do it from a Sefer Torah. If they knew the trop and they knew the psukim, the words, so they would all, today it's not done. Generally speaking, it's not done. Today we don't take out a Sefer Torah of anything. So now, the question is, the Rebbe once asked the question, why don't we find, it's one of the biblical mitzvahs. Some people even call it the 613th mitzvah. Because the last mitzvah mentioned in Torah, is it the last mitzvah, or it's a machlekes rishonim how the order of the mitzvahs go? But the last actual mitzvah in the Torah is Sefer Torah Zed V'lamdas B'nei Yisrael. So the mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah is to learn. So the question is, number one, the rishonim talk about this. For instance, there's a famous Rosh, Rabbi Yosef, the Rosh, the Rishon writes that why don't we find people writing Sefer Torahs today? So the Rosh writes, because nowadays we don't learn from a Sefer Torah. The mitzvah of writing a Sefer Torah, the biblical mitzvah of writing of a Sefer Torah, the Torah says v'lamda, to be able to learn. Where did they learn from? From a Sefer Torah. So you had to write a Sefer Torah. But the Rosh writes, nowadays that we learn from Svarim, the Rosh's time they already had types of printing, whatever. But that we learn from Svarim, so the Rosh holds, many other Rishonim hold, that the mitzvah today is actually to buy Svarim. Because Svarim is what you learn from. So there's a mitzvah to buy a Chumash and a Gemara and whatever, you learn. The mitzvah today, according to the Rosh and many other Rishonim, is to learn, to buy Svarim, to be able to learn, because that's the whole purpose of writing Sefer Torah. But the Rebbe once asked me for Bengen, why don't we find the people who are very meticulous in mitzvahs, why didn't they write a Sefer Torah? So the Rebbe explained this, by the way, it's another machlekes in poskim. Can two people write a Sefer Torah partnership? Can you write a Sefer Torah, two people together? Are they mekayim the mitzvah? So many poskim hold you can't. Because it's a mitzvah on an individual. Other Rishonim hold, yes, you could write a b'shutfus. But the Rebbe writes like this, there's a din Hilchos Shabbos that we learned, that if you're not allowed to do a malacha on Shabbos, if you do something the Torah forbids on Shabbos, lamites malacha. So then if you did it intentionally, you get skila, if not, you get karetz, if not, you have to bring a korban chatas, if you did it accidentally, b'shegig. So what happens, the Gemara says, if two people did a malacha together, let's say two people carried this basket, no air, let's say, right? They carried it from a private domain to a public domain. They carried it on Shabbos. Two people did it together. So the thing is, it's only rabbinically forbidden, not biblically forbidden. Why? Because it's not the normal way of doing it. It's called zeh yachol v'zeh yachol, if this guy could do it by himself, and this guy could do it by themselves. But they did it together, so that's not the normal way of it's being done, and therefore it's rabbinically forbidden, not biblically forbidden. What happens, the Gemara says, zeh eina yachol v'zeh eina yachol. Like to carry this out. Yeah, this is heavy. It's a heavy shulchan. So it takes two people to carry it out. So then the din is, if two people carry it out, they're both chayiv. They only carried half, so to speak, because the other person helped them with the other half. I mean, they only did it together, so why aren't they chayiv? So the din is, if this guy can't and this guy can't, and together they do it, it's considered halachically. Why is it chayiv? So the Rishonim are right. The reason for that is because it's considered as if each one did it completely. As if each one did it completely. So the Rebbe said the same thing we find in Tanya. The Rebbe says that you should divide up in the community, you should divide up the whole Gemara, Shas, every year to finish the Shas in that community. So the Rebbe once spoke, not everybody's able to learn Shas. Zeh in yochel v'zeh in yochel. And if the community together learns Shas, so it's like everybody did the whole Shas. Everybody did the whole Shas. And the same thing that Rebbe said with a letter in a Sefer Torah. If you can't write a Sefer Torah, when you you participate by buying a letter in a Sefer Torah. Not everybody has the means to write a whole Sefer Torah. Not everybody could write a whole Sefer Torah. So then, the fact that I can't and you can't, so therefore when you're together in a Sefer Torah, it's considered as everybody wrote their own Sefer Torah. So therefore you're not even lacking that aspect of writing a Sefer Torah. What?
What if you sponsor a parsha, but don't actually write it?
No, you know, the mitzvah is not to write it yourself. Tell me. You know, when they finish Sefer Torahs, you know, they'll see him Sefer Torah, and sometimes the people want to write it themselves.
Right.
You know what happens afterwards? The Sefer has a big job of fixing the letters that the guys messed up. I'm not joking. You write a letter, you tell the Sefer to write it, you know, whatever, because the Sefer writes it, yeah. You don't have to write it yourself. You make a shliach to write it, like you wrote it yourself.